So I'm going to show you what was going on with my winch here, and I'm not exactly sure what model this is, but I'm 90% positive that it's an older Badland by Harbor Freight, probably a 4,500 or 5,000 pound winch. And this was on the machine when I got it. The problem was when I would click the switch, it would go out, but it wouldn't go in. And I was thinking it was the contactor, the solenoid. So I traced all the wiring back and found that, and it must have been a dealership job. It was up behind the glove box, and the only way to get back there was to remove a bunch of this stuff, the top of the dash, this fender, which isn't easy. There's a whole mess of screws, and I didn't even remove it completely. I got it loose enough where I could reach in there, loosen that solenoid up, and pull it back to where I could see everything out here. So before I started messing with that, I got to looking down here, and I found out my problem wasn't the solenoid at all. If you look real closely, that wire is all corroded, and that was the end of this wire. I've since cut it back and trimmed it, trimmed the insulation, and I've got some decent wires showing now. It's still not the best, so I'd like to go back even a little bit further yet. But that was the issue. So when I had it in forward, the winch, the connection was just, it was not good enough to make that winch motor turn. The ground was still good, but the positive was not. So when I would put it and try to reel the winch in, or reel it out, I should say, basically unwind the winch, it would work, because this was over here, it was barely connected, but it was good enough to make a ground when this one was my positive wire. So the winch would spin out and you could unwind the cable. Well, I got stuck really bad one night. I was in a swamp for like 2.5 hours trying to get out, and I couldn't get this winch. I was messing with it forever. Finally, what I ended up doing was, since the winch would work going out but not in, I ended up unrolling all the cable and winding up the winch the wrong way, essentially. Well, I ended up getting out of the swamp, but I destroyed my cable, so we got to replace the cable. When you wind it the opposite way of what it's used to, it gets memory and it starts, it kinks on itself. I'll show you here actually what happened. I mean, that I ended up breaking it in one spot. Here's another part that got smushed. So like I said, it got me out, but it needs some work now. So I'm gonna replace the cable, but let me show you what else happened. Oh, so anyway, I've got new connector coming for here, and some crimping tool off Amazon. So I'll show you that once it gets here, because I've never had a crimping tool for wire, like this thick gauge wire. So let's first get this cable out of our way. There's usually a couple sets of holes that you can spool the winch on. I guess this one only has one, but anyway, there's a set screw here that we need to loosen, and it's probably going to be caked with mud, so you're going to need to take like a little pick, most likely, and clean that up so you don't round it off first thing. That's nice and loose. The cable should come right out of there, like that. Now, the Terex bumper from the factory, it mounts here, and the post comes up just like this. That was like 1/8 of an inch between the bumper and this post, this positive post on the winch motor. So I took this off, this motor cap, and removed the motor because I was going to clock this. And by clock, I mean normally you can spin these like 90 degrees and put the bolts in another spot. They're usually tapped in here so that you can turn this. So I was going to do that, rotate this 90 degrees, and then have my post top and bottom. So loosen these two socket head cap screws. This comes right off. And then this is your actual electric motor. Let's set that down there. Oops. So as you can see, you cannot clock the motor on this, unfortunately. You've only got two holes at 12 and 6. I went to go put this motor and cap back on, and when I did, this top screw stripped out. Actually, the hole stripped out, not the screw. So I think I got a fix for that, is take and drill this cap a little bit more so that that screw can actually seat in there a little bit further. That one's pretty close. Let's try that one. More than enough. I want like an inch. I'll take a picture further. Get that one started. Now, with any luck, that socket head cap screw will tighten all the way down and seat this cap to that motor housing before it bottoms out in this drum housing over here. It looks like we're gonna be good. I'm not gonna tighten it like I did last time and stripped it. I really didn't think I had it that tight though. So now you can see that top screw is in there much further than the bottom screw. So we actually have good thread engagement over here now. So the other problem I was having with this winch is it wasn't always free spooling when I turned this knob to free. I could always get it to end up free spooling. Actually, I think there was like 1 or 2 times where I actually had to unwind it with the remote, with the switch. So anyway, I want to take this off, this cap, and see if we can figure out why that's not free spooling. Alright, that's got some serious water in it, I believe. So let's get this all torn apart, cleaned up as good as we can, and then we'll get it all put back together. But there's like rust and stuff. Alright, we should be able to clean this up pretty easy. all nice and tight like it's supposed to be. So we got to get the lower set of planetaries lined up, and then the upper, get those to slide in place. And why would that not want to go down on there? It's still not. There we go. Just needed to turn the drum a little bit. Okay. Alright, so I don't think I had the camera on, but when I hooked it up to the terminals, it was going really slow in both forward and reverse. I mean, barely moving. So I think it was like stuck in free spool because this didn't seem to be working at all. And really, that's just underneath your free spool cover. You flip that over, and this little cover holds kind of everything in place there, like so. But I think I'm gonna clean all that up just a little bit and then put a little bit of grease in there because that's kind of nasty, as you can see. That's all dirt there. Almost wonder if it's on the motor side. All right, let me show you guys what I found to be the issue here. When you take these out, oh, there it is. It popped out that time. So there's a spring that goes way down. It actually goes on the end of this shaft, or it actually goes on this side, and the gears go in like that. But this goes on the very far end, and that actually pushes that shaft that the sun gear rides on up, so that it actually comes in contact with this set of gears on the very top, this set of planetary gears. So anyway, long story short, when I took this apart, this spring didn't pop out like it just did. It actually fell to the side in the back in that drum there. So when I put it all back together, this spring was not in place. It was not where it needed to be. So now that I know that, I can basically just turn this all upside down and get everything lined up and slide it all back together. So now, when you get that all back together, you can see that shaft actually sticks up quite a ways, and this planetary gear set actually sits a little bit proud of this lip. So now I just got to put some RTV on put everything back together, and then we can get this winch mounted up. One more cut up, like another inch, and it all looks like brand new. So water must have been traveling up the inside the wire sheath somehow. I'm not really sure. Pressure washing, sitting in mud, swamp, whatever. But I can crimp a terminal on that and feel good about it. All right, so just for reference, this 1/4 inch cable, 50 feet long, which is standard on these winches, has a working load limit of 1,400 pounds. And that doesn't sound like much because the machine itself is 1,500 pounds. But the working load limit is actually 1/5 of its rated brake limit. So basically multiply this by 5. So it's actually 7,000 pound brake strength, but the working load limit, which is basically what you want, basically what OSHA wants you to use it for in the manufacturer, just to be completely safe and no lawsuits, is 1,400 pounds. But like I said, this is standard. This is what comes on all of these. So 7,000 pounds is more than enough, by the way. You're almost never, sometimes you're pulling dead weight and you're just not going to pull it. But at the very least, or at the very most, I guess, you're pulling basically what the winch is rated for, which is 5,000 pounds. All right, I think we're in good shape. I'll get that wound up. I'll save you guys the time there, but I've got a whole video on that if you're interested in how to wind the winch up so that it doesn't bind on itself. But for like, I don't know, I had a couple hours into it just because when I took the planetary side apart, I couldn't find that spring. If I would have found that spring, I would have had it apart and back together in no time. So at least if you guys are watching this, you'll catch that on yours, hopefully. And cable was 25 bucks. Bought that at Home Depot. The connectors and the tool that I used to crimp those, I needed one of those anyway, but I spent like $25 for that whole kit off Amazon. It came with the heat shrink, the terminals, and the I don't know what you actually call them, the crimpers, I guess I'll call them, but you can look those up on Amazon. I'll put a link in the description. And the hook here was $5 at Tractor Supply, I think. So a little bit of time and this winch should be good for a whole nother 2,000 miles or whatever. So hopefully we don't need it, but if we do, it's there. I rode this the other day without it, and I did a couple like log crossings and, you know, stuff going up real sharp drop-off hills that I could have got high centered on, and it definitely makes you think twice about what you're willing to do with this machine when you don't have that winch and nobody else with you to help you get unstuck, especially the further away you get from the house. So very important tool to have on your bike. So real quick, what else I'm kind of working on here, I got that I built some mounts and mounted my high lift jack in the back there, that way for flat tires and stuff like that. You can get her up off the ground or any kind of repairs, but really just kind of used, I don't know if you can tell, but it's just a piece of flat stock, put a U-bolt and a couple holes in to hold it on the rear crossbar here, and then I welded a bolt, and then I can just kind of hold this on with some nuts. In this case, I might end up doing like thumb screws, so it's a quick on and off. And then what else? I painted the jack black just because it looks a whole lot better on this bike being all black and orange. This is kind of cool. I wasn't at all happy with my old fire extinguisher mount. It slid all up and down the place. It wasn't a tight fit at all, but this is pretty cool. It's all machined, and it's just a quick disconnect, and you got it right there. So also a really important tool to have. And you know, if you're sitting in a big group of people or whatever, the nice thing about having it mounted on the roll cage there instead of having it in storage is, A, if your machine catches on fire, you're not going to want to go reaching into the storage bins necessarily. But B, if you're sitting in a big group of people and you're off down the way talking to somebody, having a beer or whatever, if somebody else's machine starts smoking or catching on fire, they might not have a fire extinguisher. They're going to see yours sitting there, they can grab it. So anyway, thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you on the next one.